Okay, are you with the patient now?
Well, I'm in the lounge and he's in the kitchen bleeding to death with any luck.
Under arrest with suspicion of step murder. And you do not have to say anything.
Not 11. Get the ambulance in, pronto. We need CPR.
No, please don't.
Yeah, we need the ambulance in.
Stabbed him a bit more.
The woman in those audio clips is Penny Jackson. The man she is referring to is her husband, David.
He's an aggressive bully and nasty, and I've had enough.
The incident occurred on Saturday, February 13th, 2021, after what was supposed to be a celebratory birthday dinner in their Barrow, Somerset, home. Penny Jackson had stabbed her husband of 24 years to death. Initially, the story made a few local headlines, but not much more came of it. That was until the courts made a shocking choice to release the footage from that evening. Penny's callous remarks and calm demeanor made for disturbing viewing, and soon, the story had made headlines across the globe. Upon taking a closer look, it seemed the story was far more complex than anyone could have imagined. Who was telling the truth? You be the judge. The story starts with a particularly concerning call to emergency services from the idyllic coastal town of Barrow, Somerset. Not the type of place where things like this happen. Penny Jackson, a 65-year-old retired accountant, was on the line to report an incident that had taken place in her home. This was no home intruder or burglary gone wrong. Penny was upfront about what had happened. She had stabbed her husband, 78-year-old David Jackson, and he was bleeding out on their kitchen floor.
How many times have you stabbed him?
I did the one. So he said I wouldn't do it again. So there's a fourth more.
How many times have you stabbed him?
I thought I'd get his heart. Well, he hasn't got one. And then twice in the abdomen.
But what led up to this point? Prior to purchasing their Barrow bungalow in 2013, Penny and David lived in France for some time. While there, they became close with another couple, Veronica and Malcolm W.H.U. Malcolm found an instant connection with David. They had plenty in common, and a relationship formed quickly. So, when Penny and David moved back to the UK, and Veronica and Malcolm did the same, their friendship continued. In early 2021, the world was still in the throes of the COVID-19 pandemic. For Penny and David, this meant their social life was limited to online forms of communication. Like was the case for many, they used Zoom to stay connected with their nearest and dearest. Each Saturday at 6 p.m., it was routine for Penny and David to share a glass of wine with Veronica and Malcolm over a Zoom call.
We had arranged to have a Zoom chat on the Saturday like we normally did. So I sent a WhatsApp to Penny and said, "Are we still chatting as normal at 6?" She sent me a message back saying, "We're on Zoom with Isabel."
Isabel was Penny and David's daughter. That day, she had sent over a gourmet meal for her parents to enjoy as a celebration of Penny's 66th birthday. Veronica signed off of her conversation with Penny after scheduling their call for the following day. Little did she know, neither she nor Malcolm would ever speak to Penny or David ever again. When Veronica woke up on Sunday morning, she noticed a few missed calls from Isabel. This struck her as odd, and she called right back. Isabel began by telling Veronica that Penny and David had gotten into a serious argument the night before over what dish Penny was going to serve alongside the steak Isabel had sent over. Apparently, the argument began after Penny wanted to make a side of bubble and squeak, a dish made up of potatoes and cabbage. Then, Isabel dropped a bombshell.
And she said, "Mum stabbed him to death."
Penny was taken into custody and charged with the crime committed against her husband. It was no secret that she was responsible for taking his life. So, why was a trial necessary? The prosecution had a clear motive. They wanted to prove that Penny was a callous, mean-spirited woman who killed her husband without cause. The defense, on the other hand, wanted to get Penny a manslaughter charge instead of a murder charge. To do that, they needed to prove that Penny had reason for her actions. Due to the numerous video footages provided to them, the prosecution relied heavily on Penny's behavior immediately following the incident, and it was damning.
Are you with the patient now?
Well, I'm in the lounge and he's in the kitchen bleeding to death with any luck.
So, okay. So in total, how many times?
3 times.
3 times, okay.
Once I thought I'd get his heart, well, he hasn't got one, and then twice in the abdomen.
Once the authorities arrived on the scene, things were about to take a dark turn.
Hey, madam, do you want to just step outside for a minute? Can you come outside?
Yes.
Thank you.
He's on the kitchen floor.
Okay, at this moment in time, okay, if you just listen to my colleague.
Under arrest suspicion of attempt murder, mate. Under arrest with suspicion of attempt murder. You don't have to say anything. It may harm your defence if you do not mention when questioned anything you're later relying in court, and you do say may be given in evidence. I'll give it to someone then,
Yeah.
Could I get my coat?
Just bear with me 2 seconds. all
There.
right?
I admit it all.
Alright.
Just get them. All right, I want to go in. All right.
No, he's on the kitchen floor.
Can someone just stay with Devon while I go in?
There's nothing nasty, and I'm certainly not. My coat's in the.
Yeah, just
Ow,
wait
it's
2
a bit
seconds.
hot.
Right, get the ambulance in. Pronto, we need CPR.
No, please don't.
Yeah, we
I
need the
should have
ambulance in.
stabbed him a bit more.
And then we get the first glimpse into a possible reason for the crime.
Because he's an aggressive bully and nasty, and I've had enough.
Penelope, my advice is don't talk about it now, okay?
No, I have no intention of not agreeing to what I've done.
Okay.
I know what I've done.
All right.
And I know why I've done it. And if I haven't done it properly, I'm really annoyed.
But what did those who knew Penny and David the best think of these claims? That he was an abusive bully who pushed Penny one too many times? It turned out this would be a controversial issue. One key piece of evidence was a note found in their home, a note that Penny had written prior to the murder.
To whom it may concern, I have taken so much abuse over the years, but he was a good daddy. However, the mask slip tonight, was unforgivable. I accept my punishment. May he rot in hell. Self-defense, pre-med, you decide.
The prosecution maintained Penny wrote the note prior to stabbing David. For them, this was a clear indication of premeditation. They believed this since Penny was arrested while still on the call to emergency services. How could she have written the note while talking to them? When the trial rolled around in October 2021, Jenny Bliss, David's sister, was one of the prosecution's witnesses. She began her testimony by telling the jury about her brother. This was a crucial step in the prosecution's case to create some sort of familiarization between the jury and the man that David was.
My name's Jenny Bliss. I'm the sister of David, my dear brother, who I lost recently. David was 14 months older than me, so obviously very close, always very close. We always got on well. I don't think we had a moment where we ever fell out. So we were close, yeah.
David began his military career in the Army Cadets. He then went on to join the Army. He worked in the transport division as a driver. It was in this sector that David met a woman called Patricia Vizard. The pair had a fast love affair and were married not long after. They had 3 children together, a son and 2 daughters. After almost 20 years together, the marriage broke down. In 1983, David met and married a woman called Sheila Taylor. David's family adored Sheila, and it was clear David felt the same. Jenny described her as the love of his life. She brought out a different side to him, one where he had a real zest for life. In the early 90s, David was posted to an RAF base in Lincolnshire. It turned out that this posting would change the course of his entire life, for it was here that he met Penny.
David met Penny up at Grantham, but I think it was really just a fling at that particular time. He was still married to Sheila, and I know he shouldn't have slept with Penny, but he did.
Penny was stationed at the same base where she worked as an accountant.
Penny was 10 years younger. Yeah. She was clever. Yeah. She was a clever lady. I admired her in a lot of ways. Yeah. But when she came into our lives, none of us liked her. We couldn't somehow accept her for how she was. She wasn't Sheila. The comparison was vast, you know.
Penny and David married in 1996 after she told him she was pregnant with his child, even though she was now officially part of the family. David's relatives struggled to connect with her.
She told me that one day that she was so envious of me, of what I'd got, and she hadn't. At the end of the day, it was her own fault. She could have had a big family around her. But over the years, she'd made this division. She didn't want to know David's children anymore. She sent them awful letters, didn't she?
Things only got worse after Penny dropped a bombshell on David. Isabel, their daughter, was not his biological child.
But he later found out that it wasn't his child.
It gets worse, doesn't it?
So he didn't really need to marry Penny.
Unfortunately, we don't know at what point in their relationship did David find out that it wasn't his child.
Mm.
And I can imagine if when he did find out, he wasn't very happy about it.
Mm.
Even after this revelation, Penny and David remained together. While visiting the couple in their French home, Jenny and her husband discovered that Penny had a drinking problem. David knew when to stop, but Penny seemed to lack that sort of self-control, and when she drank, she got mean. Despite having witnessed their fairly tumultuous relationship for themselves, Jenny and her husband were still rocked by what came out in court. Prior to her marriage to David, Penny had been married on 3 previous occasions, and one of those husbands went on to commit suicide. This was a fact the prosecution used to paint Penny as a difficult, dominant wife. Penny married at the young age of 17 and had 2 daughters with her first husband. Their marriage was short-lived and she remained in 1981. By the age of 32, Penny was in her 3rd marriage to a man called Alan Warrender. In the early 90s, while still married to Alan, Penny began an affair with David. Alan's brother believed that this was part of the reason his brother took his own life in 1992. On Friday, October 15th, the prosecution concluded their case against Penny Jackson. It was the defender's turn next to put forward their version of events, but before they had the chance to do so, a remarkable ruling was released by the court. The body cam and emergency services video and audio was released to the public. This shot the trial, which had been making local headlines, to a story that was shared across the globe. It was this very news that came across Alan Jackson's television one evening while he was sitting with his wife. Penny had suddenly come onto his screen, much to the amazement of Alan. Not only did he not know she had been arrested, he didn't know his older brother David was no longer alive. Only, he was more shocked that he hadn't been notified of the news more than what happened itself. Alan wasn't surprised that their relationship had ended in murder, but he put the blame firmly on his brother, not Penny.
When David used to come home, he used to go up to the pub with my dad, and he started drinking heavily. I saw him changing, not for the brother I knew.
Their relationship fell to an all-time low after their mother became ill. David accused Alan of only helping out their mother for his own gain, an accusation Alan heavily denies. Everything Jenny, David's sister, thought of Penny, Alan thought of his brother. Alan believed it was David who had the drinking problem, and David who had the temper. Despite not getting on with his brother, Alan warmed to Penny and found her to be a bright, gregarious person who wanted others to like her. He claimed to have witnessed his brother losing his temper with Penny and stated it was she who had to calm David down, not the other way around. While he never witnessed David being physical with Penny, Alan claimed his mother once told him of an incident following the passing of David's son, where he throttled Penny. When Penny took the stand as the defense's star witness, she began by telling the jury more about her own life, focusing heavily on the tumultuous first marriage. She went on to explain that David changed after his son took his own life, and he had a darkness fall over him. Penny claimed that David became an entirely different person. He had a violent temper and frequently laid hands on her. This went as far as him headbutting her and throwing her down the stairs. She even said David had sexually assaulted her. However, Penny couldn't tell the jury that this bad continued in the next 20 years of their marriage. It had been a particular part of their marriage directly following the lose of his son. While this couldn't excuse David's actions, It wouldn't help the defense in convincing the jury that Penny's actions were justified that night. But there was another far more recent incident that Penny wanted to share, one that had police records to prove it had happened. In December 2020, 2 months before the February incident, police were called to attend a disturbance at the Jackson home. It began with Penny and David watching TV. She explained that everything had been fine between them when David threw the remote over to her and said she needed to find something to watch. Penny continued that she was apparently not using the remote properly, which led to David getting up and exciting the room while telling her she couldn't do anything right.
Then went into the conservatory and I followed and said, "Look, we're having a row about the remote, please calm down."
But David didn't calm down. He had a poker from the fireplace in his hand, and Penny found herself fearing that David would use it to harm her. She locked him inside the conservatory to give herself enough time to get away. He didn't calm down, though. David began smashing his way out of the room, and when the police arrived, they found him outside with shards of glass everywhere. This incident was recorded on police files, and David was told to watch his behavior. This was exactly the type of thing the defense needed to plant a seed of doubt in the jury's mind. But was it enough? On October 27th, the jury retired to deliberate. 11 hours later, they returned with their verdict.
Let's bring in Sky's Lisa Dowd. Hello to you, Lisa. That guilty verdict for Penelope Jackson for the murder of her husband. Can you tell us more?
Well, there was no reaction from Penelope Jackson as the jury of 4 men and 8 women found her guilty of her husband's murder. Another family member told the court that it was David who was the real victim of domestic violence, and sentencing his wife to 18 years in prison, the judge said he had seen no remorse.
I stabbed him.
And had no doubt that David was nothing like the person she'd claimed.
The sentencing of 18 years, effectively a life sentence for Penny, left David's family divided. His sister and friends believed justice had been served, while his brother, Alan, felt Penny had been unjustly punished for simply defending herself. Do you think the appropriate verdict was handed out at the end of the day?